Hey everyone, Ian from Eurogamer here, and against the advice of my family, friends, and colleagues, I've been thinking. And the thing what I've been thinking is, does anyone really want long games anymore? That's right, I'm here with one of those videos where you'll be able to tell whether or not someone's actually watched it or not from the comments they leave. But listen, while the title of this video may be a little bit divisive and may cause the worst factions of video game fandom to type mean names at me from the comfort of their crumb-covered keyboards, that's right, I said crumb, I cannot be the only one out there who, especially nowadays, thinks to themselves, oh, Jesus Christ, absolutely not, when seeing that a game like, say, Metaphor ReFantasio takes about 65 hours to complete. And that's just the main story. The website How Long to Beat says 100% completion will take 104 hours. And you'll need to add at least an extra 30 hours onto that for me, because for some reason, when I play video games, I like to just bumble around and spend ages looking at all the books on the bookshelves and things. I don't know, I'm weird. Although, I don't actually know if there are bookshelves in Metaphor ReFantasio, because when I heard how long it was, I was like, 60 plus hours? Not for shit. Okay, but what about a game I have played? Well, I started Tears of the Kingdom basically knowing I'll never complete it, because try as I might, and I tried a lot because I bloody love Zelda games, I could never find the time to complete Breath of the Wild. First time I played it, I think I got about 3 divine beasts deep before life got in the way and I had to put the game on hold for a bit, and then I came back to it a couple of months later and I was like, what the hell was I doing? What's all this crap in my inventory? And what even is a Zelda? And so I started again. And then I got even less far. Fewer far? Before I had to move on to other things again. All told, I think I restarted Breath of the Wild about 4 times in the end, and I've still never finished it. So when Tears of the Kingdom came out 6 years later, I loaded up that game knowing that deep down I'd never actually complete it. And I didn't. But do you know what I did complete? Just this Christmas gone, I completed The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Now that is a Zelda game that respects your time. Sure, it was longer than your average game with like a linear storyline, but it's a semi-open world RPG, so of course it's going to be. Even then though, its 20-odd hour runtime compared to Tears' 60 hours meant that I didn't have to ignore my family for the entirety of the holiday in order to see it through to the end. Although, if I had ignored my family, then my nephews wouldn't have coughed into my face and given me the plague. So, I don't know, maybe I should have played Tears of the Kingdom after all. Now listen, I might not look it, but I'm old enough to remember back to the Xbox 360 and PS3 days, when the large majority of the games were mainly linear or at least semi-linear experiences, and they told a nice, concise story without you having to book an entire month off work to fully immerse yourselves in them. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of things like Spec Ops: The Line, or Bulletstorm, or The Darkness, or, I don't know, Singularity.
Old turns to new. Life turns to death. And death becomes something in between.
God, Singularity was good. Obviously, there were still long and open-world games during that time, and before. Final Fantasy VII on the PS1 is like 80 hours or something, but still, gamers were spoiled by the amount of titles that they could just bust through in under 10 hours or so without once feeling a sense of burnout within that game world. And look, I know you still get campaigns of that length in things like the Call of Duty series and the hundreds and thousands of indie games that litter the online stores across all of the available platforms, but still, the majority of big hitters, the AAA releases and the flagship franchises have all begun to push their runtime, and my spare time, to the limit. Just as a little example, let's look at the Assassin's Creed series, which kicked off in 2007 with Assassin's Creed. This groundbreaking title that launched a massive series was semi-open world, as in it had a bunch of small open world areas rather than one big one, and you could mainline through that whole game in around 15 to 20 hours, depending on how long you wanted to spend tossing yourself off of spires like a lemming with knife hands. Using the website How Long to Beat as a ruler and just going by main story completion time rather than a full 100% run, we can see that, as the series went on, most of the Assassin's Creed games clocked in at just under 20 hours, until that is the arrival of Assassin's Creed Origins in 2017, which pushed that total to 30. Then, a year later, in 2018, we got the 45-hour-long Odyssey, followed then by the 61-hour monstrosity that was Valhalla in 2020. And that 61 hours isn't even counting the DLCs. Add them in alongside doing 100% of the game, and you're looking at around 147 hours of game time. That's 14 hours longer than it would take to watch every single episode of the original run of Gladiators. And that show ran for 8 years, for Jet's sake. And there are so many other examples of series that get longer over time, like, say, Red Dead Redemption's 18 hours compared to Red Dead Redemption 2's 50 hours of clip-clopping over bare terrain, or The Last of Us's 14 hours compared to Part 2's overstuffed 25. I mean, I think we can all agree that that one overstayed its welcome by a fair few hours and absolutely didn't need to have as many endings as Return of the King, no matter how good it was. Or, how about one of my favourite franchises, Far Cry?
If you want to survive this island, you're going to need more than that knife.
Far Cry 3 is one of my most loved games of all time. It's got a nice, tight story with some excellent beats and twists and a fun open world that's got just enough side missions in it to keep you interested in exploring without it turning into an utter slog. Far Cry's 4 and 5 were slightly larger, but they still had a relatively similar runtime, and both are still held in fairly high regard in the gaming community. But then there was Far Cry 6, a game so big and bloated and stuffed with boring filler content that barely anyone I know, aside from me, bothered to finish it. And I think bloat is the perfect word to describe the problem with sizable games nowadays. Often it's not really the length that's the problem, it's what's been added to the game in order to artificially make that game bigger. And a good case in point here would be Starfield. I did a stream series on my personal YouTube channel, Platform 32, where, to avoid story spoilers for viewers, I decided to go off and explore Starfield's planets at random to see what adventures I could get up to, and it took me about two hour-long episodes to realise that every single planet was just cobbled together by the same 3 or 4 caves and science labs whose innards had been arranged in slightly different ways.
There's nothing in here. But this interior has been in a place before. So I on a different planet I've been in this exact interior, because if you remember on my last stream I commented about the weird stretchy sinews going between things. So that's interesting. Because that means there will be a point, if I continue doing this kind of stuff, there will be a point where every kind of location I find will be something I've already seen, and then that will negate the exploration funsies.
Starfield's whole deal was to use procedural padding in order to artificially create the illusion of planets being full of interesting things. Now that sounds like a great idea in practice for efficiently producing a game with planets that were fully explorable, but a fun game it did not make.
I've seen things.
Now some of you out there might be saying, but Ian, No Man's Sky is the same kind of thing and you're not ragging on that. But that's because both games are fundamentally different. No Man's Sky is all about investing hundreds of hours exploring the vast reaches of space. It's for people who want to fully absorb themselves in a universe and discover new life forms and name planets and build and dig and just live there. Starfield, on the other hand, is an open-world RPG with a pretty cool story to follow, but it has a bunch of planets that are, air quotes, fully explorable, even though this really doesn't help progress the game at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure exploring the planets actually hampers your progression. If we could have just had some highly polished open world areas set on a few distinct planets instead of a bunch of procedurally explorable planets full of absolutely nothing, perhaps this would have tightened up the game a bit. Now I'm sure all of you out there will remember when Starfield launched and people were like, this game is great, once you've spent 12 hours getting into it. But who actually has time for that? Like, surely no one can argue that Starfield wouldn't have been a better game overall if you only had to spend 30 minutes in it before it got great. Hell, at the very least, a bit more focus on tightening the story rather than attempting to make a fully explorable star system might have reduced the amount of loading screens that we had to sit through.
Balls.
Basically, if you're going to make a massive open world, then you've got to make it interesting to explore, or no one is going to have fun. I've been shouted at for making this comparison before, but take Elden Ring's Lands Between and then Halo Infinite's open world. Elden Ring has surprises around every corner, from beautiful vistas to horrible monstrosities to dragons to gigantic structures and so much more. Every second of exploration there brings exciting and unexpected moments. That's why it's a rare big game that I've been happy to stick with. Hell, I put over 200 hours into it because every corner turned felt like the start of a brand new adventure. In Halo Infinite, however, everything is a lifeless, barren forest, and this made it so dull to explore. At least chuck in a couple of different biomes or something. Getting from mission objective to mission objective quickly started to feel like a chore when it should have felt like its own emergent quest. I honestly feel like that game would have had a better reception if 343 had just made it a tight linear experience instead of chasing that big game dream. So why exactly are we seeing this bloat, this unnecessary padding nowadays? Well, here's my theory. I'm sure we all remember about a console generation ago when the prices of games started to reach the eye-watering £50 to £60 per title mark. At that point, hardcore gamers began to complain about games being too short. Anything with a runtime of under 20 hours would get an absolute kicking in the comments, as obviously people wanted more game for their more money, and this kickback was obviously noticed by the higher up in the video gaming industry. So the suits financing these games would have all been like, no, what gives? My share price is, make game big enough or you not get more money. And the developers would have been like, yikes, we like money, but we ain't got time for that. You want this out quick, but the video game industry is currently in the process of trying to eliminate crunch. And so, in order to try and please everyone and to make production easier and game length longer, assets were reused, hundreds of repetitive fetch quests and collectibles were added, and campaigns that were once nice, tight, bangers were suddenly stretched out across bare open worlds, like one of those 13-part Netflix shows that, really could have been a 2-hour movie instead. So then, what are the alternatives? How can we get nice, chunky games that feel long but don't waste our time? Well, more games like Uncharted Lost Legacy would be great. That was a AAA experience which was largely linear, but with this sumptuous mini open world chapter in the middle that gave you that feeling of open world exploration without any unnecessary padding. That little open world bit in The Last of Us 2 was great as well. I'd play a 15 to 20 hour Last of Us open world spin-off just set in a crumbling city somewhere. That'd be great. Then there's Far Cry Blood Dragon, a smaller scope Far Cry for sure, but also one of the best and most memorable. And look, I know Assassin's Creed Mirage didn't sell that well, but I'd rather play through that one than give 61 hours of my dwindling lifespan to Valhalla's grind. If I'm going to pay what will soon probably be like £70 for a game, I want it to be one that is polished and packed full of cool moments. I want to look back on my time with it fondly, like I do with Blood Dragon and Lost Legacy, and I want to be excited to find out what's around the next corner, like I was with Elden Ring. What I don't want, and what I don't think anyone wants nowadays, is to open up a game with a sigh and force yourself to push through its chore-like padding in order to see the ending. That's not fun, or value for money. That's just a way to cheapen the experience whilst keeping the prices high. But look, in an amazing twist of irony, this video complaining about games being too long and bloated has itself become too long and bloated. So, to answer the question originally posited by me in the title, and this is where we'll be able to tell if people were actually watching the video or not before commenting, yes, plenty of people want long games. Of course they do. From people who just love them, through to people who only have enough money to buy one big game rather than loads of little ones, through to university stoners who just want to sit in their pants smoking weed and eating Doritos instead of writing their dissertation. There will always be an audience and a place for games that are mahoosive. But what we need to see from developers and publishers, and I think we probably will considering the rise in casual live service gaming and the pushback from a lot of recent titles like Starfield, is a tightening of these games. No more bloats, no more padding, no more unnecessary grinding, please. If you're going to charge a shed load of money for a game, the most important thing that you can do is to make it fun. Not a mind-numbing checklist of tasks that need to be done in order to boost the runtime so that you can boast about its size in your sales pitches. If you're going to make a big open world or a really long linear game, don't just copy and paste and then randomize it a bit. Fill it with loads of different interesting stuff so people want to spend a good chunk of their IRL alive time in it. If streaming some of these games means losing a couple of hours off their runtime, so be it. Sure, you might not be able to claim that you've got a map that's 10 times bigger than Los Santos or whatever, but at least people won't be zoning out and checking their phone every 10 minutes as they grind towards the game's long and drawn-out conclusion. Make the games leaner, more focused, and in turn this will reduce bad word of mouth. It'll lead to more sales, and maybe, just maybe, people like me with jobs or families or responsibilities or, I don't know, whatever, will be able to stick around and see your games through to the end. Anyway, thank you for watching me rant on for X amount of minutes. If you enjoyed this little opinion burst, please do give it a like, subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, and why not click on one of these other videos that are on screen and clickable right now. Look, Jim's got opinions. Oh, look, Zoe's got opinions. Oh, look, there's a subscribe button. Don't know what that one is. My friend Emma's gonna put something there. Bye!